Hello, welcome to another video from the Animal University channel. Let's go for the video. Penguin. Penguin, order Spheniciformes, any of 18 to 21 species of flightless marine birds that live only in the southern hemisphere. The majority of species live not in Antarctica but rather between latitudes 45 degrees and 60 degrees south, where they breed on islands. A few penguins inhabit temperate regions, and one, the Galapagos penguin, Spheniscus mandiculus, lives at the equator. General features. The stocky, short-legged appearance of penguins has endeared them to people worldwide. They range from about 35 centimeters 14 inches in height and approximately 1 kilogram, about 2 pounds, in weight in the blue, or fairy, penguin, Eudiptula minor, to 115 centimeters 45 inches and 25 to 40 kilograms, 55 to 90 pounds, in the emperor penguin, Aptenidites firsteri. Most are black on the back and white below, often with lines of black across the upper breast or spots of white on the head. Color is rare, being limited to red or yellow irises of the eye in some species, red beaks or feet in a few, yellow brow tufts in the 3 species of Eudiptes, and orange and yellow on the head, neck, and breast in the emperor and king, Patagonica, penguins. The total populations of some species, such as the emperor, are estimated in the hundreds of thousands, but most species of smaller penguins certainly run into the millions. Immense island breeding colonies, some teeming with hundreds of thousands of nesting pairs, represent a large potential food resource, but the economic importance of penguins is negligible. 19th-century whalers and seal hunters visited some colonies for meat and eggs, and a penguin oil industry once took large numbers of the birds. By the early 20th century, however, this exploitation was no longer profitable, and most colonies were left alone or actively protected. Some species are now increasing in numbers, apparently as a result of the mid-20th century's decimation of Antarctic whales, which compete with penguins for the krill, minute crustaceans, on which both feed. Penguin populations, however, are highly vulnerable to changes in climate and ocean temperature, including recent global warming. Penguins also are very sensitive to depletion of local fish populations by humans. Natural history. Reproduction. Many features of the penguin life cycle vary with body size and geographic distribution. The chronology of breeding may also vary within a species in relation to latitude. The majority of species breed only once each year. Certain species, such as the African penguin, Spheniscus demersus, probably other members of this genus, and the blue penguin, breed twice a year. The king penguin breeds twice in 3 years. One egg is laid by the emperor and king penguins, all others lay 2 or occasionally 3. Most penguins begin breeding in the austral, southern, spring or summer. King penguins are on a 14 to 18-month cycle, and the timing of an individual pair depends on the success or failure of the previous breeding attempt. Some populations of the genta penguin, Pygacilus papua, also breed in winter. The breeding of the emperor penguin begins in autumn, apparently timed so that the long developmental period will produce the young in midsummer, when their chances of survival are greatest. The gentoo, which has a circumpolar distribution, is notable for its lack of synchrony among populations, but otherwise its breeding schedule is essentially comparable to that of most other species. In the Crozet Islands off southern Africa, for example, egg-laying takes place in July. The 2 eggs are incubated for 35 or 36 days, and the rearing of the chick takes 2 months. The last immature birds go to sea in January. Many types of visual and vocal displays are employed between the arrival of the birds at the colony and their departure. Courtship calls are used during pairing and to a lesser degree during the succeeding phases of breeding. There are marked vocal differences between sexes in the emperor penguin and the king penguin and less marked dimorphisms in some other species. Upon arrival at the colony, each bird returns to the nest that it left the previous year and generally rejoins its mate of the previous year, unless the death of the latter forces it to choose another partner. This applies even to the emperor penguin, which is capable of finding its mate despite the absence of a nest and the large size of the colony. The displays that occur with the reassembly of the colony and the finding of mates, as well as those preceding copulation, are quite similar among the majority of species, but the accompanying vocalizations are more diverse. Various species have been described as trumpeting, croaking, cackling, and cooing. Members of the genus Spheniscus are called jackass penguins for the braying sounds they make. The behavior of experienced older birds is more elaborate and more effective than that of younger individuals. For example, Adelie penguins, Pygocelis adelii, may return to the reproductive colony from their third year onward but do not breed successfully until their fifth or sixth year. Incubation of eggs is performed by both sexes in all species except the emperor penguin, in which it is done exclusively by the male, and it is begun immediately after egg laying. With the advent of incubation, the bustle and myriad cries that characterized mating give way to quiet and inactivity. Faulty incubation behavior by inexperienced birds frequently results in the abandonment or breakage of eggs. The mortality rate, eggs in chicks, is very important at the egg stage, varying from year to year depending on climatic conditions, the percentage of young birds in the reproductive population, and the pressure of predation. In general, mortality, eggs in chicks, is from 40 to 80% of the eggs laid. In coastal colonies, predators include, in order of importance, skuas, sheathbills, and the giant petrel. On the Australian, African, and South American continents, the nocturnal habits of certain penguins and the fact that they nest in burrows substantially limit predation, which is mostly by gulls and man. Following egg laying, the female usually departs for the sea to feed, returning to relieve her mate after about 10 to 20 days. Thereafter, father and mother alternate in periods of a week or two. The female emperor penguin, however, must often walk 80 to 160 kilometers, 50 to 100 miles, from the colony to the sea and does not return until the end of the incubation period. During the 64-day incubation period, which extends through the height of the Antarctic winter, the male emperor penguin incubates the egg, holding it on his feet and living on stored fat reserves. During violent winter storms, members of the colony gather for mutual protection from wind and cold in tightly packed crowds called huddles. Emergence from the shell takes 24 to 48 hours, during which the brooding parent is particularly irritable. The chick shows feeding behavior immediately on hatching, receiving a regurgitated soup of crustaceans or fish by inserting its bill into the open mouth of the parent. During its early days, the young bird is sheltered under the body of one of its parents, who take turns foraging and brooding. Growing larger, the young bird remains at a parent's side, although the fledgling is able to maintain its body heat and move about alone. The chick then joins 100 or more of its contemporaries in a nursery group, or creche, sometimes guarded by a few adults, while both its parents forage at sea. Upon returning with food, the parent calls its chick from the creche and is able to distinguish it from other chicks, which frequently respond, by voice and appearance. During the breeding season, the number of unemployed adults in the colony increases with the addition of those who have lost eggs or chicks. In emperor penguin colonies, these unemployed birds often interfere with parents that have young and cause increased mortality. During the creche stage, the fuzzy down that has covered the chick since hatching is replaced by a coat of short stiff feathers, which are similar to those of the adult but usually somewhat different in color. Once this molt is complete, the juvenile leaves the colony to seek its own food at sea. The period of growth of the young bird from hatching to complete independence varies from 2 months, in the smallest species of the genus Eudiptula, to 51/2 months in the emperor and 12 to 14 months in the king penguin. Adult penguins molt all of their feathers once a year following the breeding period. While in molt, the bird is unable to enter the water and instead withdraws to a communal molting site usually situated in a sheltered area away from the colony. The duration of the molt varies from about 2 weeks in small species to more than a month in the larger ones. The principal enemies of penguins at sea are the leopard seal and the killer whale, orca. Seals also take penguins near Australia, New Zealand, and other subantarctic regions. Locomotion and orientation. Penguins are adapted for rapid locomotion in water, in which the wings, or flippers, are used for propulsion. The birds fly underwater. When moving at high speed, they frequently leave the water in leaps that may carry them a meter or more through the air. It is during this time that they breathe. On land, penguins are much more awkward, even amusing, as they rock from side to side as they walk. Despite their short legs, however, penguins can run with surprising speed. Some, such as the northern rockhopper, Eudiptes moselei, the southern rockhopper, E. chrysocone, and Adelie penguins, move among rocks with agility, using the flippers for balance. On snow or ice, many penguins toboggan, sliding on the belly as they propel themselves with the feet and flippers. The flippers, along with the beak, are the prime weapons in defense and attack. Scientists have long wondered how penguins are able to find their way back to their colonies from far out at sea, where currents may have carried them great distances. Also perplexing is how they are able to direct themselves correctly on land in the absence of clear-cut landmarks. Studies of penguins transported to the interior of Antarctica have found that they are able to find their way back to the ocean by using the sun as a directional aid. It is probable that the same means of orientation is used at sea. Upon approaching the coast, they are able to recognize features of the shoreline and ocean bottom. Food habits. The type of food utilized varies with the species, the geographic region, and the time of year. Most of the smaller southern penguins feed primarily upon krill, which attain high densities in the rich, well-oxygenated Antarctic waters. Cephalopods, squid and cuttlefish, and small fishes may form substantial fractions of the food, and in a few, such as the African penguin, fish is the basic element of the diet. The total weight of food consumed by a large penguin colony is prodigious, often exceeding several tons per day. Form and function. The penguins are highly specialized for their flightless aquatic existence. The feet are located much farther back than those of other birds, with the result that the bird carries itself mostly upright. Its walk can thus be described as plantigrade, i.e., on the soles. The sole comprises the whole foot instead of just the toes, as in other birds. The most notable characteristic of the group is the transformation of the forelimb into a paddle. This is accompanied by a body morphology particularly adapted to movement in a liquid medium. The thoracic rib cage is well developed, and the sternum bears a pronounced keel for the attachment of the pectoral muscles, which move the flippers. The flipper has the same skeletal base as the wing of flying birds but with its elements shortened and flattened, producing a relatively rigid limb covered with very short feathers, an ideal organ for rapid propulsion. The body plumage likewise consists of very short feathers, which minimize friction and turbulence. The density of the plumage and the layer of air that it retains provide almost complete insulation of the body. Insulation of the bird's body is particularly important for Antarctic species that live in water that is always below 0 degrees Celsius 32 degrees Fahrenheit. The cooling power of seawater at -1.9 degrees Celsius 28.6 degrees Fahrenheit is equal to that of a temperature of -20 degrees Celsius -4 degrees Fahrenheit with a wind of 110 kilometers 70 miles per hour. The skin is insulated by a layer of air trapped under the plumage, and the only bare skin in direct contact with the water is that of the feet. In the case of the emperor penguin on land, the feet are in almost constant contact with ice. The skin temperature is in the neighborhood of 0 degrees Celsius, and snow does not melt upon contact. This is possible because of remarkable anatomical arrangements in the lower limb, whereby closely adjacent arteries and veins form a system of heat exchange between opposing flows of blood. This arrangement permits cooled blood from the feet to absorb heat from outflowing blood, providing maximum economy of heat consistent with the functioning of the foot. Like other seabirds, penguins have salt glands that enable them to ingest salt from seawater. Excess chloride is excreted in the form of a solution, the concentration of which is greater than that of seawater. These glands are located above the eyes and are already functional in the young chick, which begins to consume food of marine origin from its first day of life. Recent research has shown that the species most isolated geographically, such as the emperor penguin, can be subject to diseases. Some, such as the Adelie penguin, carry in their bodies trace amounts of pollutants, albeit in lower quantities than are found in many birds that live closer to humans. Evolution and classification. Fossil record. Evidence from paleontology indicates that the penguins and the order Procellariiformes, albatrosses, shearwaters, and petrels had a common origin. Both groups are represented by well-defined fossils dating to about 50 million years ago. The flightless spheniciform line produced a number of distinctive side branches, all recognizably penguins, some giant in size. All of the fossil remains of penguins have been collected within the zone of the present-day distribution of the spheniciforms. Some apparently lived in warmer regions than do most of today's penguins. Phylogenetic analysis of living and fossil penguins shows that the group evolved a large body size early in its history. For example, two of the largest fossil penguins known, Icadips, which stood some 1.5 meters, about 5 feet, tall, and Anthropornis, which stood about 1.8 meters, 6 feet, tall, date to the Eocene epoch, 56 million to 33.9 million years ago. Living penguins make up a separate lineage characterized by smaller, highly aquatic species that began about 8 million years ago. The comparatively small size of living penguins is thus a geologically recent phenomenon that postdates the original radiation of giant penguins. I hope you enjoyed this video enough and it was informative. Please like the video and subscribe the channel. Introduce us to your friends. Good luck to you all.